This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Parshas Kedoshim. Now, I must tell you that I have not been as excited about a shir in quite a while, because this topic is one of great fascination to me personally, only because this was something I was not familiar with, and some of the research, I went literally to the other end of the world to try to come up with some of the sources over here. It's a topic that does not have any relevance to me personally, that I could assure you. The pasuk says like this: "V'ser lo nefesh lo sitnu b'vsarchem." Do not make a scratch for a soul. Uchsoives ka'aka, and a writing of engraving, what we know as a tattoo, lo sitnu b'chem, you should not place in yourself. Ani Hashem. So we have a lav in the Torah, you're not allowed to make a tattoo. Okay. Rashi says, what is a ksoives ka'aka? Says Rashi, Kesav hamechuka, a writing which is engraved, v'shakua, and embedded, she'enoi nimchak la'olam. Remember the words of Rashi, it can never be erased. Shemisha kaka'oi b'machad, once it's engraved with a needle, b'humashcher, and it's darkened, la'olam, it stays that way forever. Okay, so we have a lav in the Torah against getting a tattoo, and I know you're thinking, why in the world is the Rabbi speaking about tattoos? That is one thing that we're pretty confident. Lachar meva esim shana, we go up to Shamayim. I don't know what's going to be with the tefillah. I don't know what's going to be with the Torah. One thing we say, Ribbanu Shalom, I could say, Mamish emes la'amitai, uksoives kaka loisinu b'chem az mekayim b'miluay. And that's what today's shir is about some of the practical ramifications of this lav. But before we begin, I have to share with you a certain shaila that really was like chasing after me this week. Wherever I looked, the shaila came up. And as much as maybe I would have liked to avoid it, but it was really, every sefer I opened up brought down the shaila. Unfortunately, it's a common shaila. But it's not something that is nagea to our kehila. But here you have a guy who served in the Israeli army. He was a chiloni, and in the army he decided to get a tattoo. And often the tattoos are not the most modest images. And this man decided to engrave on his left arm Isha Aruma, an unclad woman. And lo and behold, it was mamish b'makom tefillin. In other words, it was covering the entire makom tefillin. And now the question is he allowed? Now he becomes a Baal Tshuva after he goes to the army. Of course, he went to the West Indies, and he met with the Dalai Lama, and the whole story, and finally he comes back to the wall, and Rabbi Schuster tapped him on it. Whatever the typical story is, he ended up in Eishat Torah, and now he lives in Bnei Brak, and he has 17 children. But he has one shaila. The shaila is, could he put on tefillin? Now, it's not something he's proud of when he goes to the kollel every morning in Bnei Brak. You know, he's very self-conscious about his left arm, obviously. But the shaila is he allowed to put tefillin on his left arm? So he asked the shaila to the Minchas Yitzchak, to Dayan Weiss, and the Minchas Yitzchak. And very interestingly, somebody took my notes over here, so you'll see I made a few notations. You'll save it for me. Dayan Weiss says, look, can he put the tefillin? Can he put his tefillin in this on this unclad image? So he says, first of all, this image has a din of an erva. Many achronim say that even though it's not the actual person, but a picture also has a din of an erva. And this woman certainly is considered an erva. Now, Dayan Weiss says, you know why? Because her arms are uncovered. That's what we're talking about. When he says aruma means her arms are uncovered. That means the sleeve is above the elbow. You know, people think, okay, I go on vacation, it's the summer, and there's no yidden around anyway, and nobody's looking, and it's okay. It's only a little bit, it's only a few inches, and so the way he describes it, Zroyo is megula v'isha aruma v'zoina. Okay, so you're getting a little picture. There's no such thing as a few inches. In life, everything in life, inches make all the difference in the world. Remember as a kid. So you want to listen to a game on the radio? 890 ain't gonna work. 870 ain't gonna work. But you're only off by a little bit. Who cares? No. You put in an email address and you have the right letter, but it's not capital. It ain't gonna work. Every area in life, it's the details that matter. If you're off by the slightest amount, you're out. Yeah, all of a sudden by Judaism, it's only an inch. Why is Judaism any different than anything else you do? You put in a telephone number, and you're off by one number, you're not getting through. You're not connecting. You want to connect with God, you got to fulfill the details. Anyway, so he says, what should this person do? He has this unclad image on his arm. So Dayan Weiss has a very innovative heter. And that is, the Gemara says in Erevin, it's also a halach in Shulchan Aruch, in Archaim Simon Chav Zayin, that makoim yesh bizroyai lahaniach shnei tfilav. There's a place on the arm to wear 2 pairs of tefillin. So the image is covering this area that has room for 2 pairs. So what you do is, keep half of the area covered. Only uncover the half that you need for your tefillin. So now most of her is covered. And then try to cover the part that covers up the erva and put the tefillin in the other place. And then he says like this. And in the place that you cover, use a very thin leather covering, because there is an opinion that min b'minoi is not a hefsek. So this way, in case the tefillin slips down, it's only what's interfering between the skin and the tefillin is leather, and there is an opinion that leather will not be a hefsek, because min b'minoi, since it's the same species as the tefillin, it's not a hefsek. And you put the tefillin in on half of it, the other half you cover with a thin layer, and you hope for the best. That's the psak of Dayan Weiss in the Shas Tshuvas Minchas Yitzchak. There's a tshuva here, number 4, in the Shas Tshuvas B'Tseil HaChachma, from Rabbi Stern, and he says very vehemently, this man, he's a good Baal Tshuva, and he's coming Tachas Kanfei Hashchina, cannot put on tefillin. Can't wear tefillin.
Can you put it on the right, on the other hand?
No, can't put it on the right. Putting it on your right hand is like putting it on your nose. It's not Yad Keya. The Dayan Weiss says you could put it on the left hand, even though it's an erva there, but it's still Yad Keya, it's still his left hand. Says Rabbi Stern as follows. The Gemara says in Yuma that a beis teven or beis habakar, in a place where women bathe, you do not put up a mezuzah. Why not? Because you do not want the mezuzah to see or to be exposed to an unclad woman. So says the Rabbi Stern, let's make a kal v'chomer. If a mezuzah can't be in the same room as a woman who's not dressed, kal v'chomer ben benoy shel kal v'chomer, you can't put tefillin on an unclad woman. So he says, maybe you say it's not a kal v'chomer, because there the woman is an actual lady. Here it's just a picture. He says, mekal, the sensibility of it. To put tefillin on mamish, a picture of a davar maguna, he says, how could you do such a thing? And he says even more than that. The halacha is that in a room where a person is not dressed, you can't wear tefillin. If somebody's walking around unclad, you can't wear tefillin in that room. So if you can wear tefillin in a room where someone is unclad, you certainly cannot put the tefillin on this tattoo. Says Rabbi Stern, plus when a person's wearing tefillin, they have to have a very serious mindset. They can't have kalas roish. They can't be mesiach das from their tefillin. So with such an image, how could a person prevent himself from having improper thoughts? And therefore he paskins, unfortunately this person is not able to put on tefillin. Okay, Rabbi Isai, that's just by way of introduction. The main topic that we're going to discuss this evening, and I wrote down all my scientific information on one of the sheets, and hopefully, anybody have it? Hopefully I'll remember it. And that is the shaila that is presented in a journal. The name of the journal is Techumen. Techumen is a very scholarly journal, which is published by the Tzomed Institute in Eretz Yisrael. I don't know if I would classify it as a Haredi institution, maybe more of a religious Zionist institution. But nevertheless, there are psukim there that are quoted from Rabbi Yasher, Shlomo Zalman, Chaim Kanievsky, that are not found elsewhere, and all the Sfarim quote it, across the spectrum. All the Sfarim, all the Haredi poskim quote it as a source of halacha, because there are many psukim here that are not found anywhere else. And Baruch Hashem, my yeshiva happened to have volume 10. Okay, so I was in luck with that. And the shaila brought down here was from the Rav of Geneva, Rabbi Levi, in Switzerland. By the way, I think he appears in the Igros Moshe. familiar with a specific tshuva that he asked for Moshe, and he wanted to know about the following. Nebuch lo yaleinu. For whatever reason, there was a woman, and she had a mum. She didn't have eyebrows. Now, you think it doesn't sound so bad, but really a person without eyebrows looks very strange. You know, have we ever thanked Hashem one time in our life? You know, maybe we thank Hashem for food. Maybe we thank Hashem that we have hands. Do we ever thank Hashem? Thank you, Hashem, that I have eyebrows. Probably never even thought of it. But nobody thinks a lot of things we don't think of, you know, until you don't have it. So this woman, Nebuch, did not have eyebrows. And she wanted to go to a cosmetic surgeon to cosmetically tattoo eyebrows onto her so that she should look presentable and should not be embarrassed. I'll cover Abrios. Now, I don't have all my notes in front of me. We'll try to remember. The name of this process is called micro-pigmentation, where basically it is similar to tattoo, but fundamentally different. And let's get the fundamental differences. There are 3 levels of the skin. You have the epidermis, you have the middle level, which I think is called the dermis, and you have the subterranean level. Okay, the tattoo gets under at least the first 2 levels, perhaps even the bottom level, and it's permanent. Tattoo is permanent. You cannot. There's no way to remove a tattoo. They could try to cover it up. There could be surgeries, but once the needle is injected below the bottom level of the skin and the dye is injected, it's not coming out. You can't come. Sometimes you want to cover it over with skin-colored tattoo, but you can't get it out. It's permanent. It extracts blood because it gets so deep under the skin. This technique of micropigmentation is written, I believe, on the middle level of the skin. Basically, the epidermis consists of 5 layers. The epidermis, the top layer of the skin has 5 layers. The top 4 are constantly regrowing. Every 20 to 25 days, the top 4 layers of the epidermis replace themselves. So you don't see it, but the top 4 levels of the top layer of the skin are constantly changing. It's a shed like a snake, like the nachash. But you don't see it. It's very fine. It's just cells. Okay. So what this procedure does is it gets, I think maybe there are 2 ways to do it because I read 2 different ways. Either it gets below all 5 layers of the epidermis and goes on the dermis, or only beneath 4 of the layers of the epidermis. But either way, it does not puncture all the way through, and therefore it is not absolutely permanent, but it is pretty permanent. It lasts 3 to 4 to 5 years. And this woman, who did not have eyebrows, wanted to know whether she's permitted to surgically have eyebrows tattooed onto her face. That's the first shaila. That shaila is discussed in the volume of Tchumen in Krach Yud. The next shaila, which is actually what I'm hearing is, unfortunately, something that people are considering, and that is something called permanent makeup. And it's basically the same procedure. It's micro-pigmentation, where someone who's married knows that sometimes you want to go somewhere and there can be a delay. What's delay? The answer is the final touches, right? The makeup. A woman has to put on her makeup. And even if a woman put on makeup in the morning, she has a simcha, maybe she wants to do it again. You know, it happens to be, I was driving to Shir this morning in Queens, and I hear honking, and there was a car on my right side, and the person was holding up like 20 cars behind her. So what's she doing? Putting on her makeup, middle of a Rockaway Turnpike, you know? So some people, it's mamish Kedoshim, and maybe the concept of the micropigmentation would be basically it's permanent makeup, specifically around the lips, around the eyes, and it never needs to be done. Whether it's in the night, the middle of the morning, always has the just made up look. And so you say, come on, get real. So the shoyal over here was a very smart lady, and she said, look, it's Kavod Shabbos, Kavod Yom Tov. Everybody knows the most precious time of the week are the last 20 minutes before Shabbos. And what often can interfere with lighting early or just on time, right? This way, Kavod Shabbos. her whole life she's ready for Shabbos, she's ready for Yom Tov. So this Shaila was presented in the Sefer, look at number 6, Shal Shechuvas Vishav V'Rafa, Harav Rafael Eifris. And he was asked by a cosmetician, I think that's what it's called, whether she is allowed to give women this procedure. Okay, so basically we have 2 levels of Shaila. One for refuah, which maybe all of us instinctively recognize that's more of a legitimate reason. A woman who's embarrassed, or for instance, this is where it's used very commonly. If someone is chas v'shalom in a car accident or in some kind of terrorist attack, and they have a terrible mumim, very, very frightening wounds, and to be able to present themselves to society at large, they have to look normal. And this is a procedure which is used to help a person basically recover the way that they used to look. So there are 2 levels of shaila. One for refuah, one for that legitimate reason, we would perhaps say, and the other one cosmetically. Is it permitted for cosmetic reasons? Now, in the Tshuva V'Shav V'Rafeh, he brings down 5 differences between micro-pigmentation and tattoo in general. First of all, he writes, is on your second sheet, that micro-pigmentation only lasts 2 to 5 years. Number 2, you don't actually inject the dye, you just inject the pigment, which is considered more of a natural product. Number 3, it is not injected beneath the bottom layer of the skin. Number 4, when you go for a tattoo, it's very bloody. Now, I'm not telling you from personal experience, it's how the reality is that it's a very bloody thing. And this does not extract blood. And number 5, it's a little bit derech grama, because the tattoo, every inch, every millimeter that you want color, you put it there, you put it there, you put it there. This, apparently, you just inject it and then somehow the body sort of takes it to where it needs to be. Okay. If you want to know more about it, you can read in number 7. I think we basically spoke it out, exactly what layer of skin the micropigmentation is injected to. So that's the shaila. The shaila is A for refuah and B for cosmetic reasons. Somebody just brought the whole concept to my attention over Pesach, so I actually found it very interesting. And take a look for a moment at number 7. Now, number 7 is really the main Maramakam of tonight's shir, and we're going to be quoting it a few times. It continues on later on. And number 7 is the 18th volume of Tchumen. So apparently my yeshiva used to subscribe to it like 30 years ago, and they only had the first 13 or so volumes. Volume 18, I could not get a hold of. So they have these computer resources and libraries. It's not on Hebrew books. It's not in Oitzra Chachma. I went to a number of libraries. I could not find it. How am I going to get Tchumen? So I called up my brother Ari in Eretz Yisrael. I asked him if his yeshiva has it. His yeshiva didn't have it. So I went to the Tzomet Institute. I dialed up on the computer, and they have a service that if you search for an article, they'll send you the article. So I'm typing in. I don't even have the Hebrew keyboard, and yet, I found it. For 15 shekel, they will mail me the articles. I figured they'll email me the article. No, they will mail me the article. It will take 2 to 3 weeks. This is Monday, it's not going to cut it. So I called my brother, and my brother did me a big favor. He drove down to Hebrew U. He got me Tchumen Yurches. He scanned it, and that's what you got on your sheet in number 7. So I have to give credit to my brother in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, Shkoyach Ari. So here's the shaila. Basically, there are 4 mitigating factors here, and we'll see how legitimate they are. Number 1, and what's amazing to me is, are you kidding me? Are you going to go, someone's going to ask, what did your rabbi talk about? He talked about tattoos, What kind of rabbi? What, he came to the 5 towns and he started talking about 5 tattoos? So first of all, you should know that Reb Chaim Kanievsky wrote an entire sefer on Hilchos tattoos. It's called Pashegen Haksav. I didn't even realize I had it. So obviously it's a chelek in Torah. You have to know what the parameters are. Well, the first shaila is the Isser tattoo. Here's a guy, he's a big Yankee fan, right? He mamish, as they say, he bleeds the pinstripes, right? Now he wants to get a tattoo of the. What's pshat in a tattoo? Pshat in a tattoo is you want to identify. I'm not somebody who follows the Yankees. My whole mitzius, my whole reality is that I'm an eved to the Yankees. If they win, then I'm happy. And if they lose, I'm tzubrachen. That's the concept of a tattoo, where basically you're establishing your reality. We'll see to what. There are some Rishonim say it's a way of subjugation to avodah zarah. Is it only if you write words, or is it even if you make a picture? Right? We know ksiva in general. Ksiva in general. On Shabbos, is it only if you write words, or is it even if you make a picture? So you should know it's a big machlokes Rishonim. Look at number 8, the Piskei Tosfos in Masechta Makos, where the sugya of tattoos are. The Piskei Tosfos says, he says, "Ksuba kesoyves kaka shemasar besar besakin kein oisiyos." Only letters. Only letters. If you make that the symbol of the New York Yankees, you're okay. It's if you write New York Yankees, that's when you have a problem. It's only oisiyos. Okay. The Sefer HaChinuch writes similarly that it's letters but not picture. But he's machmir, even one letter is considered a tattoo. Says the Sefer HaChinuch number 9, v'noi heges b'chol makom b'chol zman v'oiver azeh v'kosav afilu ois achas. So he also agrees to Piskei Tosfos that it's letters, but he says even one letter. Not so well known, the Ravid wrote a commentary to the Sifra, to the Taras Kaihanim, where he argues, and he says, "V'loi ba'inon ksivas oisiyos ela roisham sheyasa sham shemhu sheyasa sham hu nikra ksevas kaka." The shita of the Ravid is even if you don't write letters, you just make a picture, it is considered a tattoo. And by the way, the Minchas Chinuch also points out that the Rambam shitas you don't need oisiyos, it's even if you make an image. And by the way, the seminal tshuva on this issue is brought down the Piskei Tshuva in Yardei Sim Kuf Pei, look at number 12. The Tshuvas Me'il Tzedakah, he brings down that even if he says Ulasoif Hela Deve'inon Ksav Oisiyos Mamish Ela Desai Filu Ba'oisachas. He says Lamaisa only letters and not a picture. And not a picture. So we already have a mitigating factor here, because the permanent makeup is not words. It's maybe not even a picture, it's just marks. It's marks that are important, it's significant, could enhance the person's appearance, but it's not words. And if it's not words, then the Piskei Tosfos and the Sefer HaChinuch would say it's not an Isser D'Oraisa. Maybe it would still be probably an Isser D'Rabbanan, but this is a mitigating factor that it's not words, it's only an image. Okay, that's Erstens. That's the first mitigating factor. Let's go back to number 2 for a moment. Rashi defines, what is a tattoo? Says Rashi, She'enoi nimchak li'olam. It will never be erased. Well, we already said micro-pigmentation is not forever. It's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but it's not forever. So perhaps, according to Rashi, also, it would not be an Isser D'Oraisa. On the other hand, other Rishonim say, look at number 13, the Nemukei Yosef, Masechta Makos, says, Kiloimar, Acher Shekara Oiroi, after you rip the skin, Hiniach Diyoi, Vinikeres Sham, Zman Gadol. And it stays there a long time. He doesn't say forever. Is 2 years a long time? 2 years is a long time. I'm here, I don't know what, 3 months, 2 months? It seems like I'm here a long time. 2 years is a long time. So that's the shaila. Rashi maybe would say that the micro-pigmentation is not an Isser D'Oraisa. On the other hand, Mukei Yosef would probably say it is an Isser D'Oraisa. So that's another mitigating factor that it's not forever. Now, very interestingly, the Shalas HaTshuvos L'Horos Nasan, Rav Nasan Gestetner of Bnei Brak, he writes in his 10th volume of Tshuvas that it would seem that it's a major machlokes rishonim whether tattoo is only if it's forever or even temporarily. He brings down Rashi, who says la'olam. He brings down the Sefer HaChinuch, who says la'olam. Other rishonim, namely the Mukei Yosef, they say Zman Gadol. But he's not so convinced that we would be entitled to mitigate the Isser over here just because of Shitas Rashi. He says, first of all, if you look in the Rambam, you look in the Shulchan Aruch, they don't give any time frame. Normally, and this is something we've spoken out, Rashi is not a posek. Rashi is not writing halacha. Not Rashi and Chumash, and even not Rashi and Gemara. Rav Avadia writes in the Klalim of Psak that Rashi on Gemara doesn't have the same status as other Rishonim who write Halacha. Rashi's trying to say Pshat in the Gemara. Now, it means something, it has a lot of value, but he's not writing it Halacha, and certainly not Rashi and Chumash. But even more than that, says the Lahiris Nasan, the Nemuke Yosef says Beferish a long time. Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam don't give a time frame. So now you're going to make a machlokes that really Rashi argues with them, but nobody even brings down the halacha such an opinion that only if it's forever. But then he says something very interesting. He says, Mehechi Teisi La'olam even means forever. Does La'olam really mean forever? He wants the Haris Nasa wants to bring a raya that the word La'olam does not mean forever. In Hilchos Kisharim, right? The halach is one of the Lamites Malachas on Shabbos says you know how to make a knot. So Rashi says, Masechta Shabbos, Daf Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, what kind of knot are you now to make? Says Rashi, a knot that lasts la'olam, forever, right? We know a temporary knot. You'll have to tie your shoes on Shabbos. It's a knot that lasts forever. Says the Beis Yosef, according to Rashi, how long does a knot have to last for it to be Asr Midaraisa? 30 days. So you see from Maran Bet Yosef, you see from the Beis Yosef that he's reading Rashi, that if it lasts more than 30 days, it's also la'olam. So you see that la'olam does not have to mean specifically forever, and therefore Lahiris Nasan is not convinced that we have a machlokes, and therefore he feels that it would be tough to say the micro-pigmentation, just because it only lasts 2, 3, 5 years, is not an Isser D'Oraisa. But maybe it's a mitigating factor, the fact that it doesn't last forever. Here's another mitigating factor. The Gemara Makos says that if you look at number 15, the Mishnah brings down a deya. The last 2 lines of the Mishnah, number 15, Gemara Makos, it's Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, it should be. Reb Shimon Oimer, Einoi chayev ad sheyichtov sham es Hashem. You're not chayev for tattoo unless you write the name, shenemar, uksoives kaka loisitnu bachem. Do not make a tattoo, ani Hashem. Now, what does that mean? You're not chayiv for tattoo unless you write Hashem's name, or the name. So the Gemara says, Amalei Rav Acha B'Rei Rav Ashi, you have to write Ani Hashem? It's not a tattoo unless you write Ani Hashem? Says the Gemara, no, Kedoshim bar kapara. You're not chayiv until you write the name of an avodah zarah. Shenemar, uchsoives kaka loisinu machem Ani Hashem. In other words, Hashem is saying, I'm God. Why would you write the name of an idol on your body? So the opinion of Reb Shimon is, you're not chayiv until you write on the body, you write Yoizel, you write Chveis Buddha. That is the shita of Reb Shimon. So now the shaila is, who do we paskin like? Do we paskin like Reb Shimon, that you're only chayiv for tattoos if you write the name of an avodah zarah? So very interestingly, the Ritva quotes the Rif. Look at number 16. The Rif paskins like Reb Shimon, that you're only chayiv for a tattoo if you write the name of avodah zarah. The Rosh paskins like Reb Shimon, that you're only chayiv for a tattoo if you write the name of avodah zarah. So here we know the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins, he takes 2 out of the big 3, the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam. And here the Rif and the Rosh both say you're only chayiv for tattoos if you write the name of avodah zarah. Now strangely, the Tur disagrees. The Tur argues on the Rif. The Tur even argues on his father, the Rosh. And the Tur says, Uvechol makom she'ois again abzar chayiv, bechol ma sheyichtov afilu einoi kosev shem akom. The Tur argues on the Rif, he argues on the Rosh, and he says, you're chayiv, doesn't matter what you write. You could write Avodah Zarah, you could write New York Yankees, you could put the logo of Kihilas Avos Yisrael, you know, that they send out on the email, you know, with the torch. You put you logo Kihilas Avos Yisrael on the arm. You're out. That's also according to the Torah, it's Isser D'Oraisa. But the Rif and the Rosh say only if you write the name of an avodah zarah. So it's another mitigating factor. Number 1, we said that what? What was the first mitigating factor? It's not words, it's only a picture. Number 2, second mitigating factor, it's not forever. And number 3, you're not doing it l'shem avodah zarah. Now, each one of these mitigating factors is maybe a little bit weak. Many Rishonim say, even if you just make a picture. Most Rishonim say, just for a long time is considered a tattoo. We paskin that it's also, even if it's not l'shem avodah zarah, but again, it's a third mitigating factor. Interestingly, the Aruch HaNer learns that even the Rambam, so look at the language of the Rambam. The Rambam number 19, in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Parak Yud Beis Ois Yud Aleph, the Rambam says, what's the isser of tattoo? Ksoives kaka hu amura b'toira hu sheyisrad al basaroi, to scratch on the skin, on the flesh. V'yimale makam asrita koichal oidiyoi oishar tzevoinim v'zeh hoya minhag hagoyim. This was the custom of the Gentiles. Sheroishmin atzmam avodah zarah. They would sort of brand themselves avodah zarah. Shekaloyma shu eved machala, that they're a slave, they're sold to it. Umoyrasham la'avoidasa, and the avodah of avodah zarah is their legacy. That's what the tattoo would mean. The Aruch HaNer learns, the Rambam, that the Rambam holds that it's only an isser of tattoo if your kavanah is for avodah zarah. If your kavanah is for anything else, the opinion of the Aruch HaNer and the Rambam is that it would be permitted. So you have three mitigating factors. It's not writing. It's only a picture. It's not forever. It's not l'shem avodah zarah. Let's bring in one more. Let's bring in a fourth. There's a halacha. Let's say you have an eved. Or, so we moved in, so we get new garbage cans. So they say, you put a new garbage can, you have to be very careful. People are going to steal your garbage cans. So you have to paint on the garbage can your address. Okay. What do you do with an eved? Eved's going to run away. So you want to tattoo the eved. You want to brand the eved like they did in Germany. Actually, there's a tshuva in Shas Tshuvas Mimamakim. Since it's usher to have a tattoo, should a survivor try to have surgery to remove the numbers? And Rav Ashri says, no, for them it's a badge of honor. Okay, maybe we'll discuss that at a different time. But let's say a guy wants to brand his eved with a tattoo. This way, if the eved ever runs away, he could claim, he's my eved. So the halacha is, it's a Gepaskin in Yeridei, look at number 23, Haroishem al avdoi shel yivrach pater. If you tattoo your eved so he doesn't run away, you're pater. In other words, it's not a chiyav, you're not chayiv, you're pater. The Rama says, l'tcharchilo, you shouldn't do it. So there's a sefer on your Get Pashut, and the sefer Get Pashut, he asks, why is it not a chiyav, why are you not chayiv when you tattoo your eved? This is a full-fledged tattoo. It should be Isser Dairaisa to tattoo your eved. After all, an eved Kenani is chayiv in mitzvahs, like an Isha. Answers the Get Pashut. The Isser of making a tattoo is only when you make the tattoo for the tattoo. But if you do it for something else, it's a malacha shein tzricha legufa. You're not putting a tattoo because you want a tattoo on the eved. You're putting a tattoo on the eved in case he runs away. This way you could find him. It's a classic malacha shein tzricha legufa. Or he says it's at least davar shein miskavein, like someone who drags a bench and he's going to make a ditch. Maybe yeah, maybe no. It's a davar shein miskavein. His intention is to drag the bench, not to make the ditch. Someone who makes a hole. Someone who makes the hole. So it's a malacha shein tzricha legufa, unless he needs it for the dirt. So this is a classic case of malacha shein tzricha legufa. You don't want the tattoo on the eved because you like the way an eved looks with a tattoo. You think an eved with a tattoo is really tickles your fancy when he brings you your tea. Sporting a tattoo, it makes you feel good. No, it's just a way to make sure he's like an animal. Like you earmark an animal, so you know who it is. You don't lose it. You wanna tattoo the eved. This is malacha shein tzricha legufa. So, some want to suggest that if somebody has this permanent makeup only to avoid embarrassment, so they're not doing it because they're not doing it for the tattoo. They're doing it for a different reason. It's also like a malacha shein tzricha legufa. Not so easy to make that case. You want the mark, you want the image, you want the eyebrows. But that's another case that is made. So bottom line is, in the volume Techumen, in the 10th edition, if you look at number 26, he brings in, now this particular article in Krach Yud is written by Harav Ezra Batzri, and he says as follows. He says, number one, you have the mitigating factor, it's not words. Number two, you have the mitigating factor, it's not forever. Number three, you have the mitigating factor that what? It's not l'shem avodah zarah. And you're not mechavin l'shem tattoo. So at the most, it's an issur d'Rabbanan. And we know, Gadol kavod habriya shadoicha lo yisaseh shebetoira. Now, it doesn't mean that kavod habriya is doicha lav. The maskana of the Gemara is, it's doicha d'Rabbanan. So, ein lecha Gadol kavod habriya is yoiser, then someone who doesn't have eyebrows, I mean, that's, somebody who doesn't have eyebrows walks into a room, it raises a lot of eyebrows, right? It's a strange thing. The person feels very uncomfortable. This is classic Gadol kavod habriyos, and it would l'chayra push off a lav midairaisa. Sounds pretty sound lahalacha. Okay? But now the next level is, what about for cosmetic reasons? So, in the 18th volume of Techumen, Rav Baruch Shraga, look at number 27, he writes, he doesn't buy into the svara that if you're not mechavin l'shem tattoo, it's permitted. And therefore he says like this, to tattoo just for cosmetic reasons, just so a woman does not have to take the time to constantly do her makeup, he says it's asur. It's asur to do it. And to top it off, he quotes many Rabbanim who agree with him. Number one, he quotes, this is the number 27, Shal Sechubas V'Shav V'Rafeh, of Rav Rafal Eifris. Number two, he quotes Rav Shraga Fivish, Shal Sechubas Shraga Hameir. Number three, he quotes Rav Ephraim Greenblatt, the Rav Ephraim. And then he says, so I went to discuss it with the Gedolei Hadar. And I went to the Rashal. Who's the Rashal? Rishon LeZion. Who's Rishon LeZion? Maran. Rav Avadia. And Rav Avadia was maskim to me that a woman cannot do this. And not only that, I asked Rabbi Yoshev, the Poisek Hadar. Rabbi Yoshev said, can't do it. And I asked Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Fisher, the guy of Leida Charedu, said he can't do it. And I asked Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, and Rabbi Chaim said you can't do it for cosmetic reasons. Okay. Lo and behold, I was perusing the library, and I came across a new sefer of Rabbi Avadia Yosef. The sefer is Taras Habayis on Hilchos Nida. And I could not believe it. Rabbi Avadia writes that a woman who has permanent makeup, it's no chatzitza for mikvah, and if she does a lecharchila, don't castigate her. In lim chos piyad. Why? Says Rabbi Avadia. First of all, most Rishonim say that since it's not forever, it's not an issur d'oraisa. Second of all, many Rishonim say that it's not letters, so it's not an issur d'oraisa. Third of all, the Rif and the Rosh say it's only issur d'oraisa of l'shem avodah zarah. Says Rabbi Avadia, new klal. 3 d'rabbanans on top of each other is mutar l'charchila. V'haraya, he quotes Chasam Sofer and Gittin Daf Chafam Abeis. Take a look over there. The way I read it, he says even 2 d'rabbanans. And therefore says Rav Avadia like this. If somebody has some kind of wound on his face or her face, and he's doing it to avoid embarrassment, yesh lahakel mishum kavod habriyos, and now we already established, and Rav Avadia quotes many places who agree. But what about for a woman to do this for cosmetic reason? So I'm thinking to myself, what in the world's going on here? Here I just read the Techumen, and Rav Baruch Shraga says he asked Rav Avadia, and Rav Avadia said you can't. And here Rav Avadia is saying you could do it. Listen to this. So Rav Avadia says, what about for cosmetic reasons? He says in the Sefer of Harav Hagun Rav Chaim Amsalam in Shal Shuz Berchas Chaim, he says it's mutter. And Rav Avigdor Nebenzal says it's mutter for the above mentioned reasons. Rav Baruch Shraga argues, and he writes, you're not allowed to. And Rav Rafal Eifris says you're not allowed to. And Rabbi Ephraim Greenblatt says you're not allowed to. And Rabbi Baruch Shraga writes that I told him you're not allowed to. Says Rabbi Vadia, upon further analysis, after looking into the sugya more and realizing all of the mitigating factors, those who are mekel have what to rely on, and we don't castigate them. Says Rabbi, I'm not going into the Beis Yaakovs and recommending that people do this. But Lamaisa, if people went ahead and did it, okay. There are plenty of other. Now, you say, okay, I'll be samach on Rabbi Vadia. Then you're going to have to tell your wife to give up her shaitos. So I'm not sure Rabbi Vadia is the right person you're going to be samach on for, ladies' apparel. But that's the shit of Rabbi Vadia. Rabbi Vadia says, he doesn't say l'chadchila, he doesn't even say b'di'eved, right? Again, he's not saying b'di'eved they could do it. He says, ein limchos b'yadam. But, as we pointed out, Kemat all the poskim say you can't do it. Rabbi Yashiv, Posek Hadar, said you can't do it. Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Fisher says you can't do it. Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky says you can't do it. The Shav Rafa says you can't do it. The Rebbe Voice Ephraim says you can't even do it for embarrassment. He holds it's Karav L'Isur Dairaisa. And let's end with this. In the Shas Tshuva Shevet HaLevi of Rav Shmuel Halevi Vosner, Zechatzak Levracha, he received a letter from Ramat Yisrael Deitch. And if I'm not mistaken, Ramat Yisrael Deitch himself feels that there might be what to rely on. But he says, since nobody agrees with me, he was not going to take it upon himself. And Rav Vosner says, bottom line, she should not do it. Either because it is karoiv letatu, or he writes another reason, and this is a very important reason. Says Rav Vosner, the Gemara Masechta Shabbos. Gemara says a very frightening thing. Why was the Beis Hamikdash destroyed? So we say, of course, everybody knows sinas chinam. Everybody knows all the cliches. Avodah Zara, Gili Arayas, Shvichas Damim. Somehow this Gemara is conveniently forgotten. And the Gemara says, it's a whole sugya Masechta Shabbos, that the women in the time of the Churban were putting on too much makeup on their eyes and too much perfume. And the Gemara says that's what caused the Churban. And it elicited the young men to do inappropriate things. But it was because the women made themselves up too much. So it says, what, a woman's now to try to look good? It says, look, the Gemara says, Ein Isha Ela Lanoi. But there's a threshold, there's a level, there's a certain, there's a line. So where's the line? The line is that a woman should not be attracting the attention of people she's not married to. It's a very important thing. So where do we draw the line? How do we know what to do? Says Rav Vosner, one thing I could tell you. This is pushing the envelope. This is too much. For a woman to be in a situation where 365, no matter what, she comes a Yom Kippur, comes a Tisha B'Av, and the woman looks like she just put on makeup, this is what the Gemara is talking about. So is it a tattoo? Now I want to mention two hashkafas here. Rabbi Vadia writes there's a kula. The kula is, first of all, it's not oisios, and it's not forever, and it's not l'shem avodah zarah, and that's not your kavana. So you say, well, what more can you need? You have room for a kula. I'm all for that. When there's room for a kula, then there's room for a kula. But to be mekel, you need two things. You need legitimate makayim lahakel, and you need legitimate soirech. You need a reason to be mekel. So if a person has a blemish, and a person has something embarrassing, that's a legitimate reason. Is a cosmetic preference a legitimate reason? You have to understand that there are many shittas who say you can't do it. So if there's a real need, a person has to be able to understand there's makayim lahakel, yeah, but you have to understand when the tzairech is warranted, when the cause is justified. When there's a justified cause, the poskim will find a way to be mekel. That's not the purpose of halacha is not to make a person's life difficult, but a person also has to understand that the cause has to be legitimate and justified. And as Rav Vosner is saying, especially we come to the months of the year when people are going outside and people are taking to the streets more, people are more in the public eye, that person has to be aware that, as the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos, a woman called Kvuda Bas Melech Penima, that tznius is encompassing many aspects of the way a person presents himself, including makeup. And according to Rav Vosner, and according to the majority of the Gedolim, whether this is the exact Isser, most poskim feel it is. But beyond that, perhaps there's another consideration over here, and it's something to bear in mind, not just in this issue, but as one lives their life in general. Rabbi say, have a great evening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.